Gear sets, brand sets, exotics, named and high-end weapons in gear. Every season sees more and more being added to the bloated corpse that is the Division 2's gear system. Why do Massive keep adding more and more gear to the game? And how can we make the gear system good again? The answer to the first question is pretty simple. Adding new gear gives players something to do. With so little new content having been added to the game in the last 4 years, there's been very little to do other than chase god-rolled gear and new exotics. Releasing new gear every 3 months creates the illusion of a healthy game, which has only really fallen apart as the ability to deliver gear that is worth chasing has ended. Even if we ignore our stash bases and mules that are stuffed to the brim with gear already, the answer is yes. Balancing has been a constant feature of every major update to the game, and adding more gear only makes this more cumbersome and time consuming for the developers. At a time when we really want them to be focusing on getting the Brooklyn DLC over the line and delivering new content, seeing patch notes stuffed to the brim with buffs and nerfs is frustrating and clearly not wanted from the backlash from the community that these receive. I think that there are a number of things that Massive can do to make the gear system feel good again. Before I run through these though, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this as well, so please do leave a comment below if anything resonates with you or you disagree with it. The first thing I would like to see them change is fairly easy. It's time for the Division 2 to do the Datto vault clean of gear and get rid of all of the underperforming exotics, named items, brand sets, gear sets and weapons in the game. Have you ever used the Ninja Messenger knee pads, Motherly Love gloves or the Aegis gear set? If they weren't in the game, would you miss them? I would go well beyond just these broken items and prefer cull on all of the gear. Currently there are 20 gear sets, 30 brand sets, 49 exotics and over 100 named items in the game. A good start would be to cut the number of gear sets and exotics in half. This would be a much more manageable number for Massive to get right, while still leaving enough in the game for build variety. Gear sets in the Division 1 felt incredibly powerful compared to high-end gear, but in the Division 2, outside of a handful of them like Strikers and Heartbreakers, too many are just not that special. This in part goes back to something I said in a prior video. Right now I think that the Division 2 lacks class identity. Outside of the obvious differences between weapon damage, skill and sniper builds, everything feels very similar to play. I would like to see fewer gear sets, but which have a more distinct playstyle or function. Specializations are a waste of space right now, so give us gear sets and specializations that synergize with each other better and deliver unique abilities for some incredibly powerful and memorable moments. Going back to the Division 1 again, the high-end gear provided fairly limited benefits, making gear sets feel very powerful in contrast. With all the buffs that brand set gear has received recently, that gap has been closed significantly, if not eliminated completely. So why have both? It just introduces complexity and adds to the overall bloat of the gear system. But I don't see this happening. So how could we reduce the number of brand sets to a more manageable number? Firstly, I would get rid of attributes that buff specific weapons and convert those to all weapon damage buffs. This would immediately eliminate the need for many of the different brand sets. You would probably only need a handful at most, focused on close, mid and long range damage or weapon handling. Secondly, use skill efficiency more on the skill build brand sets, which would remove the need for so many doing just small variations of the same thing. Look at Alp Summit and Murakami for example, both of which have repair skills and skill duration and just one bonus slot different. Similarly for the survivability related brand sets, why do we need armor and health? If these were merged into one toughness related stat, you could eliminate half of these brand sets straight away. Gilligard and Golem Gear for example, which both have total armor and armor regen on them. And while we're at it, get rid of the gear sets that just aren't very good. Yes, 511 Tactical, I am looking at you. Finally, there is always the option to get rid of brand sets completely as they are and just have the named items. This would work well with a gear system focused around gear sets, with the named items adding synergy to those gear sets. My final thought on gear once again goes back to the Division 1. These were versions of the gear sets with a 6-piece bonus that made them significantly stronger than the base versions, and quite often leaned further into a build archetype. They were also much harder to get, making the grind for them feel meaningful and worth it. I would love to see Massive reintroduce these into the Division 2 and give us something really worthwhile to grind for. A lot to unpack in this video, and I would love to hear your thoughts on where gear is in the game and what you think Massive should be doing about it. The cancellation of seasonal characters shows that they are listening when there are enough people shouting loudly enough. So get your voice heard.